My friend, you became a therapist because you wanted to help people, to heal, to make a difference in the world. But here's the part that nobody told you. If you're a therapist in private practice, you're not just a therapist. You're the CEO, the marketer, the bookkeeper, the entire HR department. It's a lot. And let's be real, none of us got an MBA alongside our counseling degrees. And we spent years mastering theories and interventions and how to work with clients. But never once did people tell us how to read a profit and loss statement, build a referral pipeline, price our services without burning out in the process. And this is a real pain point for many therapists. And interestingly, the irony here is that over 50% of therapists are managing solo private practices. And this is why so many clinicians who dream of private practice as the answer will eventually find themselves feeling stuck, scared, secretly wondering, was this a good idea? So if you're in this place right now, today's episode is for you. I'm Lisa Marie Bobby. You're listening to Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists, the place where growth-oriented clinicians come to learn how to not just create transformational experiences for our clients, but also for our careers and develop a profession that actually works for us. And today I am joined by someone who knows a lot about building not just sustainable, but soulful businesses. Melissa Bernstein. Yes, the co-founder of the billion-dollar toy company brand, Melissa and Doug. She's the founder of wellness company Lifelines, author of upcoming book, The Heart of Entrepreneurship. And she's here with us today to share her wisdom and experience on some things that can help you start having a better time in private practice and also learn about some of her new initiatives that can help you help your clients. So, Melissa, I'm so happy to see you.
That was a great introduction. I'm so glad to have this conversation. I can't wait.
Yay! Oh, we are going to have such a good time because I know that you have so much incredible wisdom and perspective to share. And let's just start with the business piece. I mean, okay. For like the two people within the sound of our collective voices who are not familiar with you and what you have done, tell us just a little bit about your story and then also your mentorship for people going into business so that people can place you in context, first of all.
Of course. So I have had the fortune of being bit by two profound missions in my career. One was at 22 when Doug, who was my then boyfriend, and I decided to leave our lucrative corporate positions to the horror of my family and start a toy company together while we were still dating. And I think, for 35 years, we built that toy company. We actually sold it last year. But it was an exercise in passion, patience, and purpose, which is the heart of entrepreneurship. And we learned so many lessons to the point that after about 20 years building that business, I felt like I had to share these with other young entrepreneurs because we had never had mentorship and had gone down so many rabbit holes that we shockingly got out of, but almost didn't. So I started mentoring young entrepreneurs about 15 years ago. And Doug and I started an accelerator called Melissa and Doug Entrepreneurs at Duke University 13 years ago and mentor new business founders with ventures. And I realized that mentoring entrepreneurs is as profound a meaning and mission as creating products because I love to help people take something deep within them and bring it out to the world in a beautiful way that's consistent with their values. And I started to see that so many people who said they wanted to be an entrepreneur and sort of pursued that path were actually not meant to be entrepreneurs, or they needed assistance with lots of the aspects of being an entrepreneur, or they were racing so quickly toward the finish line of sort of getting their product out that they missed creating a product that people actually were clamoring to purchase.
Mm.
And I started to see these things over and over and over. And ultimately, it led to creating a curriculum for the Inner MBA, which is this amazing program by Sounds True and LinkedIn, and then led to this book called The Heart of Entrepreneurship.
What an incredible story. And I love it. I mean, there was so much purpose and passion originally with the toy company, and then also
True.
thinking about how this translates into supporting other people in their own, grand mission. And that's why I was really so excited to speak with you for this podcast, because I have yet to meet a therapist who wasn't deeply in love with the idea of helping people in a really meaningful and powerful way, right? And that's, I mean, what this podcast and my personal work is actually all about is how do we help the helpers?
Mhm.
Because many times therapists can take these very noble intentions and start going out into the world to be of service and value to others, and at the expense of themselves in a
Yeah.
way that can um, ultimately lead to them abandoning the profession a lot of
Yeah.
times if it
Yeah.
goes too far. And so that's why every and all thing that I can put in front of therapists to help them is very meaningful to me. And so when you think about here's what I'm interested in is,
Yes.
you are used to operating in a big business world. I mean, Melissa and Doug, like billions of dollars. And I'm sure that the entrepreneurs that you coach and mentor, I mean, they are operating at a large scale frequently, I would think. No, is that not true?
No, I
No?
mean, well, we started with
Mm-hmm.
nothing and we have a new venture, which I didn't mention, that started is very small. And
Mm-hmm.
the people I mentor, no, they're in college and grad school.
Okay.
They have
Well,
tiny
good.
little ventures. So no, no, no.
Okay.
This is not beyond me. Small
Uh,
business is
Well,
my sweet spot.
oh, good.
Yes.
Well, I'm projecting all kinds of fantasies on you now,
Yeah.
Melissa. You seem larger than life, but this is
Uh,
good though, because the reality for a lot of therapists in a private practice is that it is a solo private practice. They are
yes.
sitting in their little rented office for several days a week, seeing their clients, and I think many times clinicians have gone into private practice coming out of agency environments,
Mhm.
clinics that can often be
Mhm.
training environments that are um, there's so much need in to serve those client populations, but they're oftentimes very challenging for clinicians, traumatizing work, heavy caseloads, underpaid. So then they move into private practice, and that can certainly check a lot of the boxes on that bingo card, getting paid more per hour, theoretically, being able to have more freedom about the types of clients that they see, having more control over their hours. So many, many advantages there. But they often still sometimes struggle in private practice for a lot of other reasons. I mean, the isolation, but I think oftentimes there are operational things that need to happen in a business.
Yeah.
Um, Financial operations, getting things done, all the communications, marketing, right? Like, how do you tell the world about you,
Mhm.
especially if you don't want to just take referrals from insurance companies?
Mhm.
And the hard part is a lot of therapists, like, none of this is stuff they are even a little bit interested in doing. And it
Exactly.
creates this like friction. But compared to other options, there are a lot of great reasons to be in a private practice instead of in an agency. So if you had somebody in this situation coming to you as a mentor,
Yep.
where would you even start?
Uh, it's to me it's very simple because
Oh,
we've been here. So that's the
okay.
good news. I would start with figuring out someone's what I call their passions. The
Hmm.
passions, the intersection between their passion and their talent. And life is about maximizing your time spent on your passions. So for them, I would imagine for most of them, it's going to be about the actual act of counseling and therapy and not the act of all these other things. However, you never know. Some might say, there are a couple aspects of it I actually love. I love the counseling, but I also love the marketing. So I think it's very important to first really be honest with yourself, right? About what your sweet spot is and what isn't. And I know in my career, there are points at which you can't afford to offload things you don't want to do because you're a sole practitioner. And for many years, Doug and I mean, we did everything. We collected the money, we shipped the product, we cleaned the floors.
Mm-hmm.
But the sooner you can offload those things, especially, here's the key. If the time you're spending doing those can be spent on more clients and bringing more money into the business, then you're actually going to find out that you should be offloading that sooner rather than later. So what Doug and I did very early on, and it was Doug really who did this, but it's profoundly changed our lives, is he built a bench. Like think of yourself as building a team, even though you're a sole practitioner. He hired, even when we could barely afford anything, he was smart enough to know, if I get good people, not full time, we're talking, people who have businesses supporting other businesses. If I get a good accountant, a good lawyer, a good fractional CFO,
Mm.
right? All these people, a good marketing person that are doing it for us while doing it for other people, then they're going to do it a lot better than we can. And they're going to avoid making some really bad mistakes we could make, because he was also terrified. We also got a really good insurance agent. And if you can believe it, those people are still with us today.
No
We're
kidding.
talking 30 plus years later. Our
Amazing.
accountant, our lawyer, our insurance person, all still with us. So my advice is, it's less than you think. And they're so good at what they do. They can save you so much in taxes and in the way you're thinking about things, that it's almost always, in all our experience, those have been 10 times less than the cost it would have been to do it on our own.
Mm.
And then what happens is we can spend time really growing the business and doing the things we love. So I think we have this misperception that hiring people, will like cost more. And sure, if they were full-time people, but you're not hiring full-time people, you're becoming one of their clients. And usually it's a lot less than what they would save you.
Okay, that's really good advice, is to think about what are the pain points, what's getting in your way, and is there a relatively easy, inexpensive way to, even on a fractional basis, outsource some of that so that you can
And there
focus.
really is today.
Yeah.
Today there are many fractional people who do these things. You can get good recommendations. We do a lot of our stuff at Lifelines, sort of freelance,
Hmm.
and we never would have done that at Melissa and Doug. But we're realizing it's a lot less costly, especially if your
Yeah.
workload ebbs and flows. To do it on that freelance basis,
Mhm.
and it's proven really effective. So
Yeah.
I think that's, the sooner you can do that, and I would view it as a cost of doing business, even if it is a cost. I think it's more important to spend your time doing what can bring in the money and what you love, and not getting burdened by things that, like I said, you're not maybe good at or love. And it will save your business a lot of money down the road. Getting the right insurance, doing the right things with our taxes, doing the right things with our accounting practices, like that was, like, you can't even put a price tag on that with our business.
Yeah, I hear that. All right. Well, that's good. And I think hopefully opening some doors in the minds of our listeners. I mean, I think therapists don't think that way, right? You have a little business operation with different people doing different things in a business, and that is a really important lever to pull, is creating that team if you want this to feel different and have a better time. And so in
Yeah,
the
even
private practice.
a lot of
Mm.
my little entrepreneurs, they try to do all their graphic design themselves, and they create marketing materials, and they look awful.
I
Like
bet.
some of them have products and they create the packaging, and I'm like, listen, this will never sell off a shelf. Like, this is not good. And look, go to a Target and look what's on the shelf. Like, it's beautiful packaging. So my advice to you, I mean, I say this to them, is hire a college graphic designer. Like, it'll cost you $200. I know it seems like a lot. but it's not a lot if it's the difference between selling your product and not.
Mhm.
So it doesn't take a big investment, and you can get people who are expert in all these disciplines and can give you a result where you're just like, your mind's blown. You're like, oh my gosh, I was going to do this, and look at what they came up with.
Okay, good advice.
And then the last
And
piece of
oh,
advice I'll
one
ask,
more. Hmm.
having used AI so extensively now, AI can do a lot of these things for you. You know,
Mm.
we're using it in our customer care to organize all the inbound emails that are coming in. We're using it for a lot of our designing catalogs, and it's really life changing.
Yeah.
And you can buy the Plus, which is $20 a month, Chat Plus. It's, I think, 5.0 plus now. And it's really like better than 2 or 3 employees. So that's another thing to investigate. A lot of people who are older, like myself, it took a little bit of a like, like a breath and like closing my eyes and jumping in, because, it's terrifying when you think
Yeah.
of it. But I can't imagine doing business without it now.
Interesting. Okay. That is also a good suggestion. And I think you're right. Even just very recently, things are possible that weren't
Oh yeah,
possible
this is
just
in
a
the
few
last
years
1 or 2 months.
yeah. Huh.
Since chat became 4.0, and that's when everything changed. It moved from 3.0 to 4.0, and then the ability of it to do complex things like went up probably 20-fold.
Incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, many therapists listening to this podcast right now have strong feelings about the presence of AI in other areas of our profession. There are some, I think, probably very useful and important applications of this technology to support positive mental health outcomes in an affordable and accessible way for
But
people that really do need help. And also, there's some risky things happening right
for
now, but I think also many therapists are having at least a little bit of feelings around, is this going to impact my job at some point? And I think that there are some spaces of this where
Well,
probably right to
I'm
be thinking
right
about.
with them. I'm a creative, and there's nothing
Hmm.
more terrifying than knowing that this, like,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence can create products, perhaps more effectively than I can. And that's all I've done my whole career. So
Yeah.
I'm with you if you're fearing it. But unfortunately, to close your eyes to it is also not embracing the future. So, I realize that I can be fearful of it, but I can also utilize it for all it's worth,
Yeah.
and try to grow my business as quickly as I can so that we stay ahead of it.
Good advice. I love it. Okay. Well, the other thing that I'm so curious to hear more about. So, you mentioned that your own journey of entrepreneurship, and that after Melissa and Doug, like it's continued to evolve. And in this next iteration of your entrepreneurial creativity and visioning, you have a new passion that is quite useful for therapists. And I would love to hear just a little bit more of the backstory here, the origin story, and then learn a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Oh my gosh, I would love to tell that story because it is so analogous and involved a lot of therapy.
Ah.
So, I always created from the time I was young, but I really was channeling a lot of darkness, a lot of sort of existential nihilism, which were very dark thoughts about meaning. And when I was young, I just channeled darkness into more darkness. I couldn't seem to figure out how to get that part of me to touch light and to touch other people.
Hmm.
And when I couldn't figure out how to do that, I was in a very dark state because it seemed like all that pain was for nothing. And if I wasn't going to be able to channel it into meaning, then why was I here? And what was the point of my being here? And it was only when I started to make toys that I realized that I had the capacity to actually take darkness and channel it into light, bright toys. And that
Interesting.
really was a choice, because I could take the darkness inside me and channel it into dark things, or I could channel it into light things. And when I made that choice, I never really looked back.
Mm.
And for 30 years, I created, close to 10,000 different toys. I mean, we just were a product machine. And it was joyful. It was like breathing fresh air, for the first time. But after I entered sort of my 40s, I started to feel something really odd. It was like this dam of repression that had held back my authentic self my whole life, which was really that I was a very sort of heady, introverted, ruminative, dark thoughts person. I had hid that under this facade of like perfectionism, pleasing, sort of this, performance.
Mm.
And that dam started to weaken. And I think, when we are holding back a lot, like, and we're in our 20s and 30s, that dam is pretty strong. But as I got older and more tired, I think it started to spring some leaks. And I
Mm.
started to feel like one of the products I created, that I was sitting in this beautiful package on this light, bright shelf, but the truth of who I was hidden.
Mm.
And I started to hear this drumbeat that I had to come out and sort of share my truth, that like a lot of creatives, people love what we create, but they don't accept who we are in all our sort of full spectrum of
Mm.
emotion. So I went on this big journey. I wrote a memoir called Lifelines. I went on this huge media tour and was like on CBS Sunday Morning and in People Magazine. And it was like a big thing because the story of a toy maker who suffered from darkness was like such a dichotomy, and everyone loved this story of like, wait, behind those light bright toys there's darkness. Dun, dun, dun.
Mm.
So my journey, to sort of acceptance of my true self, which I now call a blurse, a
Mm.
blessing in that I can create sort of out of white space, but a curse in that I have a really heavy, burdensome personality that can bring me really low at points.
Mm.
But it took three paths, non pathological paths. It took, cognitive behavioral therapy, where I learned to take all these things I thought were true and reframe them. Philosophy, where I learned about logotherapy, which is
Mm.
Viktor Frankl's
Yeah.
philosophy of healing through meaning. And I actually became a certified logotherapist. I'm sorry, logotherapy coach. And I studied independently, and I now coach people just
Mm.
for my own personal meaning, which is so meaningful. And that philosophy really changed my life. And then I studied spirituality because one of my biggest problems, and again, businesses are about solving problems. And one of my biggest personal problems was, how do I untether from rumination and overthinking and dark thoughts? How do I interrupt that and get back to the present moment where all is well?
Mm.
And I tried everything to do that. I tried meditation, I tried yoga, I tried breath work, and they were all so challenging for me. And it takes years to be able to effectively do that. And I was just too impatient.
Mm.
So one day when I was having a particularly challenging day, I was out in nature and I was all balled up and clenched and probably muttering. And this beautiful spring wind came and kind of blew the hair back from my face. And in that moment, I instinctively like raised my face up to the sky, and it was this beautiful sunshine. And I just went, and in that moment was my epiphany. I realized that I had completely untethered from all thought, and it had been instant, effortless, and enjoyable. And that was the genesis of our new company, Lifelines, because I thought, wait a second, I have been working so hard to try to get to that spot. And here I just opened my innate senses up to the joy and beauty of nature, and it happened in an instant. So that set me down. So I've talked about curiosity and how following these little sort of glimmers of interest. And I was so fascinated with discovering what was going on and how opening my senses to delight could untether my stress response that I went down this crazy rabbit hole of researching um, everything about that whole area, the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system. And I became literally an expert at understanding the way our physiology worked.
Mm.
And that actually there was something to this, that our senses were the quickest and fastest way and most effective way to interrupt the stress response.
Yeah.
And whenever you're trying to interrupt the stress response, you have to use something related to your senses. So I started to research my senses and look for products that could become part of my grounding well-being practice. And unfortunately, what started to happen was the things I purchased were not acceptable to me. They did not do what
Mm.
I wanted, and the things I wanted to purchase didn't exist. So, unfortunately, I started to see an entire product line in my mind, 30 linear feet going through every sense. And I was like, oh no, Melissa, you are not
Not
doing this
again.
again. You are finished. 30 plus years of grueling entrepreneurship, not again. And one thing Doug and I said is we will never start another company. That was a never. And it had sunk its teeth into me with
Mm.
such vengeance that I couldn't. Every night I was like, let go, little ideas, let go. And after about a month I was like, oh no, I have to do this. They're too strong. Like that product line needs to be out in the
Mm.
market. So that's what we did. 4 years ago, we started a new company called Lifelines that makes these sensory immersion tools that delight the senses and interrupt the stress response. And, I don't go anywhere without them. I mean, right now I'm using you probably saw, using my pen diffuser, which has this one. Oh, this one is
Yeah,
citrus.
tell me about. I'm so curious, and just so you know, I'm like in the pool. I'm sitting here holding my little rock just to like
Mhm.
have a thing. That's something that I do. But tell me more. Like,
Me
I'm
too.
so curious what this involves.
Yeah, I basically wanted tools that could ground me, because
Hmm.
I realized that my whole life my wiring is such. I have a highly aroused central nervous system.
Hmm.
My wiring starts up here. So
Mm.
that when anything happens, if you're already starting up here, right, you could go and, you just go off the rails. But if before anything, anxiety provoking, I can get back down to baseline, then if a little anxiety happens, I'm right. I'm at a perfect level. So and one of my like epiphanies was it's not about pain. Like I always believed no pain, no gain, and everything has to be hard and impossible and hurt. And when I had that epiphany with nature, I realized, oh my gosh, it's the opposite.
Mm.
It's if it's painful, you actually don't want to keep doing it. And it's
Yeah.
it's really, it's don't look forward to it. But when it's something amazing, like suddenly you the light in doing it and you look forward to it and it becomes part of your practice. So I brainstormed all these tools that could become part of my practice. And a couple of them relate to writing
Yeah.
because I love to journal. And these are sensory pens that have these little vents. So they smell heavenly.
They
And it's
smell good.
oh yeah, they smell
Oh.
amazing. So we have this sensory profile quiz so you can kind of figure out what your best favorite scent is, and really then like citrus is my favorite, so whenever I smell it, I've gotten in the practice of it signals my brain
Hmm.
you can unclench, you can relax now. It's safe. It doesn't go into fight or flight. And then these are grounding stones. Speaking of stones, whenever I'm speaking or doing something, because, I'm an introvert, but I've had to do a lot of things that are very scary for me. One of the
Mm.
scariest with Lifelines is I've had to be live on QVC, the shopping channel, about 10 times. And it's really not easy for me to do that. If I start to think about it, forget it. So I have to do things like put my favorite scent. So this is a grounding stone that has
Okay.
a fidget. It actually has I don't know if you can see, it has an
Oh.
hourglass with moving sand on the top, and it feels really good. And then inside you put your favorite oil. We include one.
Interesting. Uh-huh.
So it smells and it has texture and it fits perfectly in the palm of my hand. So,
Oh.
like, I've associated now citrus calm with my calm. So when I smell it, I know that I'm like, can come back to baseline.
Right.
And I do this before I do these unsettling things, and they just bring me back to baseline. So we have about 100 products now.
No
Um,
kidding.
and it's really so joyful to create products for myself. Like for
Mhm.
32 years, I created products for children, which I thought could bring me no greater joy. But the truth was, I'm not a child, although I act like one, and maybe my maturity is of one. But the fact that I'm creating products that I can use, and
Yeah.
now I can be the judge of if they're good or not, because I'm the harshest critic, is like mind blowing. I have had such a great time creating these.
Oh my goodness. How much fun, but also just the whole story is using your own inner experience and being so deeply connected to yourself and identifying this gap that meets the need of a lot of people. I mean, it's so individual, but then it extrapolates, right?
And that's
But
entrepreneurship.
yeah,
Entrepreneurship
exactly.
is self
Yeah.
vision, bringing it, then seeing and assuming if I'm a person and I'm a human and I'm having this big issue, maybe others do too.
Mhm.
Sometimes they don't. Like I've had those epiphanies and nobody else agrees, in which case you don't make the product. But
Right.
in this case, it was really tapping into that very human, I mean, anxiety.
No, I,
So,
I get
just,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, no, completely, and seeing that this need, and I also completely understand. I tend to be a very intellectual, thought-based person for whom meditation and all the things have never worked either. And so to have a physical grounding, but also to have these tools that you know will work, and to be able to reach for different tools for different situations, have them be positive and pleasurable. I know that our somatic therapist friends are probably so excited about this right now because broadly applicable. And I think also just speaking to reality that it's another thing that people need and might not have realized that they need them until you put one of these things in their hand. They're like, oh, I feel better.
Exactly. So we have a product called Flow Art that's a guided art meditation,
Ah.
and it's getting you into flow state, which is this state
Hmm.
where your attention is so focused on an activity where the challenge is 4% greater than your skill that you actually untether from your thoughts and you get into this like sort of space where time stops. And when people do it and they get to that place, they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't been here since I was a child. Like they remember it because that's play, right? Play actually is flow. But unfortunately, it's very sad in our adult lives. Like we don't live in flow ever.
Yeah.
We live in heightened arousal, fight or flight state. So it's really it's really fun to see the effect
Mhm.
that even just a simple product can have on someone's day if they actually utilize it.
Right. Ah, that's amazing. And so, when we were chatting earlier, you mentioned that therapists have started using these in their
Mhm.
practices with their clients, and that
So
was one of the
many.
reasons that I wanted to connect with you for your insight into business opportunities and entrepreneurships. But also, I mean, here is a space that I think is important for therapists who do want to develop enduring, positive, pleasurable businesses to be thinking about is also how do
Exactly.
you differentiate yours? What do you stand for? Who are the people that you seek to serve? And what are the kinds of things that not just they need, obviously, but that would also set you apart? Because my therapist friends, without that, people think of therapy as therapy, not knowing what we know, that there is a very multidimensional piece of this. This can look so different depending on how you're applying it, the client population you're working with. But if you don't have a way of communicating that difference to the people that you want to work with, they're not going to know how amazing you are. And so, Melissa, it seems like the products that you have been developing are really designed for a type of therapist who, what? How would you fill in that blank?
Well, two ways. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
therapists can either integrate them into their sessions, or many are actually selling them and
Okay.
selling a lot of them as an alternate. If you're entrepreneurial, this is
Mm-hmm.
another really cool way you can grow your business. You could start
Nice.
to have some of these aids available for purchase,
Mm.
and you can utilize, what they're doing is they're integrating them. It's a very smart way to do it. it's
Yeah.
like it's like a demo in a toy store, right? The reason toy stores open demos is because the kids start playing with them and then don't want to leave, and the parents buy them. And when we gave stores free demos, they always ended up selling the demo itself because they
Mm.
ran out of. So what you do is you get these in your practice and you have them all around, and then of course your clients are saying, like, where do I get these? And you're like, oh, you can
Mm.
get them from me, and it's no more than getting them anywhere else.
Yeah.
So I think it's a nice way to open up yourself to a potential other stream of business.
Yeah. I love this creativity. And this is exactly the type of things that therapists frequently, just don't have any exposure to be thinking about. I think that we in counseling school get taught this like one way of being. But what you're saying is to be open to these new possibilities and think about what other types of things your
Exactly.
clients might also benefit from so that you can expand the scope of what you can offer to them in a very
Yes.
positive way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a
Mhm.
somatic therapist friend who is using these in her group sessions. And she has a whole like sort of repertoire of what they do. They start with a product, then they go through her somatic uh like content, but they start with flow art, then in the middle they use like a grounding stone, and at the end they do a different flow art. And she's just worked these tools into her
Amazing.
content, and then at the end she says, Melissa, like, I sell like 20 or 30 products too, because they're using them in the session but they want them after. So it just becomes like,
Yeah.
a unique offering that they can give their clients.
Yeah, it really does. But I mean, this is even not to take this too deep, Melissa, but I mean, touching an even deeper space because I think many times clients can leave the work in the room, right? It's like this special little 45 minutes or an hour once a week or whatever, but it's a very tangible, felt way of taking the experience and the things that they're working on with them into their daily life in a meaningful way that helps them stay connected to the ideas and the practice. Because, in my experience, without that, um, it can sometimes be difficult to translate the things that clients do in those experiential moments with a therapist into their daily lives in a way that continue to benefit them without a therapist sitting right there. It's sort of an extension of the experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We
Yeah.
also make
Mhm.
sensory journals, and that's part of it too. A
Super.
lot of them give sort of a
Yeah.
sensory pen and a journal so they can record, when
Oh,
they're not in the therapy session, anything that arises, and kind of
yeah.
use that as their special therapy tool. So
Mm.
I'm not trying to like sell people on Lifelines, but the idea
S-
of just bringing other products and other modalities into your practice
Yeah.
is like entrepreneurial and very creative.
Exactly. And just personal share, and also my listeners have heard me talk about this before, but that was actually a big piece of my journey because I was that independent solo private practitioner kind of trying to do the same thing that everybody else was doing, but noticed after a while that the clients who were coming in to see me really weren't there for mental health treatment. They wanted help in creating different outcomes in their lives. So like
Mm.
you might not know about this about me, Melissa, but I'm dually licensed. I'm a psychologist. I'm a marriage and family therapist. And so a lot of people were like, help me figure out my career or help
Love
me
that.
figure out my relationship, improve my communication, all these different things. And quickly realized that what therapists are taught in terms of how to treat clinical mental health conditions is not the same thing that what a lot of their clients come into therapy for. So there's a big disconnect here. And so what that turned into for me was an exploration of coaching psychology that I
Mm.
incorporated into my practice and
Mm.
used with the clients for whom clinical mental health treatment modalities aren't really going to be that effective. And so that turned into the basis of my business, but also what I'm doing now is trying to support clinicians in developing different competencies, particularly around coaching. They learn nothing about it in counseling school, and 50% of people who show up for therapy don't need psychotherapy. And that is a huge learning opportunity, I think,
Mm.
for clinicians, but it also requires what you're talking about is this way of thinking about what do people really need? What do I have? What are the
Yes.
possibilities? And that openness to experience. And there's so many of those that perhaps it could be sensory supports, perhaps it could be coaching modalities. But I think the journey of growth as an entrepreneur, as a clinician in private practice, is doing that own inner work around who am I? What do I offer? What do I want and need? What's missing? And that's really exciting creative work.
Of course it is. You
Yeah.
saw what was needed. I mean, you really
Mhm.
looked at your target market and you said,
Yeah.
you know what? It's shifting, right? And
Yeah.
how can I be relevant? And I think that's amazing. You did exactly what an entrepreneur does. You saw an opening in the market. Seriously, this is
Hmm.
what I talk about with all my entrepreneurs. You were aware, you didn't get too blinded by your own skills, right? And you weren't like, I'm going to keep doing these skills even if people don't want them,
That's the problem.
right?
Hmm.
And you said, you know what, it's shifting, it's a little bit more coaching, and I'm going to fill that need. So kudos to you. That's really not easy, and it shows that you have that, you are an entrepreneur.
Wow. I loved the word, though, that you said, blurse. I'm going to start using that.
Yeah, it's a blurse.
It's both of
Yeah, and
those.
you know what,
Mhm.
that's really key for all of us,
Mm.
because we all, the opposite of our worst quality is our best quality.
Mm.
And usually all of, I mean, nobody is perfect, we're perfect, imperfectly human. So we all have good things about us and things that we don't love about us, and I think part of life is accepting that we are a combination,
Mm.
and we all have things that, maybe you don't call it a curse. For me, it's more of a curse. But we all have things that we have to accept in ourselves, whether we like them or not. And that's part of the whole journey to authenticity.
Hmm. You want to hear a secret, though?
Yes.
Therapists are really good at telling other people that they should do that. And when it comes to themselves, can be very hard on themselves, feeling like they need to be everything to
Yeah.
every person. And if they can't help everybody, it's like a
Yeah.
statement of their own worth. And
Uh,
so I just wanted to highlight what Melissa is saying right here, you guys, is that it's very important to think about who you are, what are your strengths, and who are the people or the situations or the problems that you can really use those gifts, but also acknowledge the fact that there are limitations to that in a very healthy way. And I'll just say, you guys, I mean, in our training experiences, we are thrown into these situations where you really do have to work with anything and anybody that walks in the door. And so we get desensitized to this a little bit. The meta message from our training programs is that we should be perfectly perfect all of the time with every person. And so the beauty of advancing in your career, moving into private practice, is that you get to make thoughtful, informed decisions based on your personal values and sense of meaning, and a true appreciation of, in Melissa's words, your gifts. Your
yes.
gifts. Hmm.
And also, I think it can be terrifying to
Yeah.
see something changing in your market,
Right.
and some of us tend to say, like, repress that and sort of keep plowing forward. But there is so much possibility in the unknown. And if you have the courage to say, I think I'm seeing something, I think my client, and say, I'm not sure what this means, but I know that I'm open to changing with it. Like, there can be a lot of excitement in that. Ultimately, if you
Yeah.
have the courage, it takes a lot of courage. But if you can open yourself up to what might be possible, again, the openness to the possibility, there can be a lot of excitement down the road if you do that.
Yeah. Well, this is also a good thing to say out loud, because I think many people in my profession, I'm kind of an anomaly that tend to be very, what is the word that I'm looking for? Cautious in the sense of taking their responsibility to other people very seriously and
Mm.
thoughtful. And because there's so much ambiguity in my space, like looking for what is the right way, like what can I hang my hat on? So that can make it a little bit hard to deviate. But this is what I love about your work, and what you explain in your new book, Melissa, is really how to start tapping in to some of the openness to experience and the creativity. And so before I let you go, would you do our listeners a service of talking just a little bit about your new book, so that they can think about how to apply some of these ideas in their own lives? Because I think it would really benefit them.
Yes. So, entrepreneurship for me has
Mhm.
been a really spiritual experience. It's about tapping into something deep inside you,
Mm.
what you're here to give the world, and figuring out a way and having the courage to get it out into people's hands in the vision you really saw initially in your head. And that whole experience is nothing short of sacred. I truly think the only thing I've done like that is birth actual children.
Mm.
Birthing your product is so. I think I've become very passionate about the heart of entrepreneurship. And I think so many people go into entrepreneurship, and it's perfectly acceptable if you want to go into it as a business for the ego of it, for the financial of it. But this book is not about that. This book is about how do we create products, services from our souls? And how do we keep going back to that place where creativity is abundant and we come up with these really cool, innovative ideas continually?
Mm.
And I think if we follow the recipe to do that, because there is actually a prescribed recipe that most people do not follow, it's very simple, but most people will not follow it. If we follow it, we can be a wellspring of innovation and ideas throughout our entire lives.
That's incredible. And that is the kind of business book that therapists can really get behind and read. It's
Yeah,
like,
this isn't about the financial.
no, no, no.
I
This is
am
like,
not
I
at
get it.
all about that, because
Yeah.
the truth is, if you don't create inspiring products that
Hmm.
people are clamoring to open their wallets and buy, none of that other stuff even matters. And I always laugh when people are showing me their business plans and showing me all the things that only matter once they have a winning product. So I'm always, to my entrepreneurs, I'm like, put that stuff aside, focus on creating a product that people are clamoring to purchase, or a
Mm.
service. Then we'll talk about the other stuff. And by the way, the other stuff is easy. If you have that, creating a winning product, that's the thing no one does. If you have a winning product, I can figure out how you can market it and, distribute it and manufacture it. That's not the issue. It's the idea has to be really, really special.
Mm.
So I think that's how to do that. That's what I talk about and what I'm so passionate about.
Amazing. Such an inspirational conversation. So, you guys, Melissa Bernstein, her new book is The Heart of Entrepreneurship, the new company with all of the amazing sensory, smushy things that are going to make everybody feel good, including you, are at Lifeline. And so, Melissa, tell us more about where we can stay connected with you, learn more about the
Yes.
book, about your products.
So anyone can email me directly. I love to
That's
talk with
amazing.
people. It's
Hmm.
Melissa, Melissa, at Lifelines with an S, Lifelines.com. And then our brand is Lifelines. We are on Amazon, Target. We'll be in Walmart this fall, and a whole host of these beautiful, wonderful independent specialty stores who we love as well. Barnes and Noble College.
That's incredible.
We would appreciate your support. We're still a new brand, and it means a lot to have people support us because that's how we get to keep creating.
Yeah.
And without that, we wouldn't be here. So we appreciate any support we can get.
Amazing. Oh, well, Melissa, it's such a joy to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom with our crew today. And hopefully, we'll get the chance to visit again sometime.
I hope so. Thanks so much for all you do. I'm really inspired to talk with you. You embody the heart of entrepreneurship,
Oh,
and I'm so glad to have this discussion.
thank you. It is a labor of love for
It
sure.
really
So,
is. It really is. Not for
yeah.
the weak, but we're fighters. I can tell.